Hello, it's Dawn Michelle, and welcome back to my channel. It's that time again. I can't believe it's that time again. I feel like I say this every month though. It's that time for our monthly favorites, reflections, talking about all the things I got up to, the decks I worked with, and some memories and fun things that happened all throughout the month of June. So I do have my planner here. Trusty planner, so I don't forget my notes. Also, my planner now has its own baby notebook, and how cute is that? Like, it sits right in the cover. Love it. Anyway, okay. Kind of all over the place today because I have a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try to keep it fairly concise so that hopefully we can move through things fairly quickly. As always, I'll have timestamps in the description box below in case you want to jump around. So before we get into the decks and stuff that I worked with, because I know that's what y'all really want to see, I do want to talk about a couple of things that happened throughout June, because there was a lot of really cool new things that happened in June. In terms of my channel, so I started 2 new series. The first is the new series that I'm doing with my very dear friend Lisa Pepez, where we are talking about all the different aspects of practice. We're going to be getting into the individual types of practice and talking about how we go about those and sharing some of our reflections on that as well. So we are going to be doing that series every month for the next year, for the rest of this year at least. We have it planned out, and we'll be bouncing back and forth between our 2 channels. So our first installment was talking just about the foundations of practice, and that was here on my channel. And then in July we will be over on Lisa's channel talking about deck personification, which I am so excited about because that's like a topic I absolutely love to discuss. So that was really exciting to start that series in June. I also started another series here on my channel called Cards and Company, where I invite other tarot readers to come on my channel and chat with me about various tarot topics. So in June, my beautiful friend Candy from Candy Soul and Soil came on and talked all about tarot journaling and art journaling, and it was so wonderful to get a chance to hang out with her. I have several friends that I've looped into doing this with me over the next couple months, so I'll be trying to get to at least one of those every single month for the next couple of months. So that was really, really exciting. Also, like, I released a book again. I'll do a little flip through, but I released the new paperback version of my Connecting with the Tarot, which was formerly called Tarot Bound, which I published in 2019. This version has been expanded, actually quite a bit. When I was looking back at it, it's got a bunch of new spreads in it. It's got a bunch of new prompts. There are now 78 card descriptions in here, which I had to sit and write. And you know, you think if you've been reading tarot for a long time, it would be pretty easy to sit down and write 78 card descriptions because, you know the cards, right? Not the case, man. I struggled with this. But it's here. It's done. And I'm so excited about it. And I love the format that it's in. It is in color, which is awesome. Well, that's all black and white. But in general, it's in color. And it's a great size. And I love just having it here hanging around. It has been so much fun to see posts on social media with the book popping up all across the world. That's been super cool. So definitely thank you to everybody who has been purchasing it and supporting my work. It's been amazing. I'll do a quick little flip through here before we jump into the decks, just because I've had lots of people ask if I would show what's actually in the book now, and maybe talk a little bit about the changes. I'm going to try to do that pretty succinctly and quickly because I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, and that whole thing also came out of a video, so I will leave that linked in the description box below because that is basically my practice for how I get to know a new deck, so how I study a deck. And I do have a related video, so you don't need to buy the book. You can watch the video too. The book just gives a lot of exercises and prompts and things like that as well. So big thank you to everybody who has not only purchased but supported and shared about that. It's been really, really exciting. I do have a couple of other exciting things coming up hopefully in the next maybe month or 2. There might be a deck or 2. As my members have seen, and we've been working through the process, I'm in the final proofs of a couple of decks, so hopefully those will be done shortly here in the next, like I said, hopefully in the next month or 2, and I'll be able to share more about those. Big shout out and thank you to my members, to my weavers, because Like, they have been absolutely fantastic in supporting me through these whole big projects that I've been doing. And just, of course, we get to share our monthly medicine practice with each other every month, which is just amazing. And so even though I've told them thank you like 100 times, I just want to give like a very public shout out and thank you to my channel members. It's through your support that I'm able to actually keep doing what I'm doing, and it's really wonderful. And I feel so privileged to be able to share that space with you, just as I feel privileged to be able to share this space with all of my subscribers and viewers as well. But special thank you to my channel members, because y'all have been an amazing support system through all of this crazy stuff that I get up to each and every single month. Okay, few little just, I don't know, random thingies like that I had going on. So Kevin and I have been playing like a lot of Diablo, like a lot, probably more than we should, but that's okay because it's tons of fun. So as far as like, I don't know, TV, movie, I don't really talk about that kind of stuff too much here because I like watch the same things over and over again. The like main sort of show thing that Kevin and I watch is obviously like Critical Role, D&D stuff, gaming stuff, things like that. We do watch the new Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. I've been watching that some. Like, and most of the time, like, I'm just usually watching like my old favorites because like I read this thing or I saw this thing somewhere. Like, people who have high anxiety, which I do, particularly social anxiety, which is freaking ironic given that this is social media, right? But for people who have anxiety, like watching the same shows over and over again that you know really well, you know what's going to happen. Like, it's like a comfort thing. And so like when I call them my comfort shows, that's literally what they are. They're always on in the background. So yeah, that's things like Stargate, always on in my house, Star Trek, Doctor Who, like that's just kind of what I watch. So I don't really stay up on top of all the new stuff unless it's like super sci-fi related, because that's like my jam. I couldn't even tell you what new shows are out or what platforms anything plays on anymore. So I'm like the worst person in the world to talk about new shows or movies or anything like that, because like I'm still stuck in like the 2000s and 2010s and 1990s and still watching all the same shows from then. So I think that was it. I think that's the majority of the like preamble sort of stuff of just like what I've been up to. Most of it's just been tarot related, making some decks, writing some books, hanging out with my members. Like that's, you know, in addition to doing what you all see here that I do every single month. That's just kind of been my usual around here. Like business as usual. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I like when business is as usual. Like makes my anxiety happy. I was about to say, let's pop over to my table, but that is the other big thing that I totally did this month that I forgot to mention is, you might be able to see behind me, I got rid of a whole desk and I rearranged my whole office. I did a little space tour with my members and we talked about like why I did the things that I did. I switched from a desktop PC to a laptop Mac, so that was a whole learning experience. I do have like an iPad and phone and whatnot, so all of that like integrates now, which is really great, especially in terms of like my design stuff. But the big thing is that everything is now here at this desk that is sitting in front of me, my camera, my filming, everything. And what's behind me now is just more books and decks and altar spaces and stuff like that, which is amazing. And I've really enjoyed it. Also kind of loving the laptop life, right? Like I haven't had a real laptop for probably at least 10 years, if not more. And it's been nice, but it's a double-edged sword because now like when I had my PC, I could be in here and I could be working and be like, okay, work is done. So now let me go in the living room and play some games or watch some shows or do whatever. Take my iPad and draw. Now I'm like, oh, I could take my laptop too. And then I end up still working. So I gotta be mindful of that because that could totally be a double-edged sword because now I'm totally mobile. And so I can work anywhere, and that is not necessarily a great thing because you should not be working all the time. Even when you completely love what it is you do, you should still not be working all the time. So anyway, yeah, that's a big thing. So we're not going to pop over to any other desk. I'm just going to switch over to a different camera, and we're going to take a look at all the decks that I worked with throughout the month of June. We'll take a look at my tarot journal, and I'll do a really quick flip through of the Connecting with the Tarot in case anybody would like to see that book as well. Also, I got a new crystal crystal skull. He is a howlite and his name is Chetney. And so Chet's been hanging out with me quite a bit over the last couple days, so I went ahead and put him here on my table because it's been requested that I do like a flip through, but I really don't want to do a whole video dedicated to it, so I'm just going to do a really quick book flip through here. This is the print version of my Connecting with the Tarot, which has seen a couple of different iterations over the years, starting in 2019, which it was originally called Tarot Bound. That one did have a print. It was large and I mean, it was fine. It was nice, but it was not practical for like, I think having on your table was like a little bit too big. There's 5 basic sections. Most of the sort of introductory stuff is the same. So we have talking about how to use the book, talking about bonding with the tarot, some of the different things that people do. And then we go into like the workbook section of this. And this is how I work through a process of like studying a deck. So when I want to get to know a deck deeper, when I want to bond with it, sometimes I will take it through this process. I do have a whole video on that, so I'll leave that link below so I don't have to go into all of that here. But yeah, like all the prompts are pretty much the same. I have added additional activities from the previous few versions. There's lots of new different activities, but basically most of it has like, you know, it kind of talks about the activity, what you want to do, how you work with the cards for that particular activity. Anywhere that there is like a little gray box here with the journaling icon, that means that you can use that for further reflection or journaling. There's a whole section on personifying your deck, spreads, working with the cards. And then the big change from this versus the previous versions is that there is now a page for every single card. The prompts are still pretty much the same, but I've also added in kind of like what the traditional depiction of the card usually is so that you can compare that to the deck that you're currently working with. And it asks you like, how does that card compare? How does it contrast? That kind of thing. And we have that for all 78 of the cards. So I've gone through and added all of that. Then we have a whole section on spreads. So there are quite a few new spreads in here if you have some of the previous editions. And then there's some like deeper layer activities with some readings that go into a little bit more detail and, you know, different ways that you can work with your cards. So that's kind of the overview of the book. It has been expanded upon since the previous few editions. This is probably, I hope, oh my goodness, I hope is going to be the final edition of it. It's currently available in print on Amazon. It's available in most countries. There are a few that apparently it's not. So I am also working on a Kindle edition, mostly because like it's been asked for repeatedly. So I am in the process of formatting this for Kindle, and hopefully that should be out sometime in the next couple weeks. Yeah, that's my new book. It's just expanded, updated, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so enough of the like promotion stuff. Let's get into the decks. Okay, so we're gonna be looking at the decks that I used for the June monthly medicine, which is the guided tarot practice that I offer in my membership. And the theme for June was Enchanted Realms. So those are primarily the decks that we're gonna be looking at today, and I'm gonna talk about how I worked with them and all that kind of good stuff. I have a few decks at the end that I wanna mention, which were just random decks that I worked with throughout the month as well. Okay, so our first week was our Realm of Nurturing, and this is where we were looking at what it is that we want to nurture in our life. So all of our prompts were geared toward that. For this particular practice, and you'll see this month I used a lot of different decks for most of the practices. That was kind of a thing that I wanted to do, was really just expand my readings beyond just those set positions and really bring a bunch of different stuff into them. So I used my She of Insight Oracle, the Guided Hand Tarot, the Coastal Curiosities, and the Inner Compass. So this is my She of Insight Oracle, which is in this beautiful Crystal Haven bag that I ordered for it. And this is a gorgeous collage deck that was made by my friend Renee at Meadowlark Mystic. I'll leave a link for her channel in the description box for you. Here's the beautiful backs. I absolutely adore this deck. It was wonderful to see Renee go through the process of creating this deck and how it all kind of came together. And it's been really cool to have it in deck form where I can actually work with these beautiful feminine energies as well. And I used this primarily as my guide for the week. So as we were walking through the Realm of Nurturing for that first week of June, I was working with the She of Insight. I happened to pull Hope, as my main guide, but I did also work with this deck throughout the week, just pulling wonderful guides to help me, you know, just navigate my days as well. So you'll see in my journal that I have my readings that I did specific to the prompts that we were working with, but then I also used these decks throughout the week for other things that I was doing, other readings that I was doing. And that tends to be how I work with my monthly medicine decks. I tend to switch them out weekly. And for the week that I have them out, I'm using them not only for my monthly medicine, but I'm also using them for whatever readings I get up to. I adore this deck. It's beautiful. The guidebook is wonderful. I did get into the guidebook because Renee's got some really wonderful write-ups in there, some things to think about, some journaling stuff for you to dive deeper into the work with these particular embodied energies. And it's just been a really beautiful process of getting to know this deck, getting to know these figures and working with them in my practice. So that was the deck that I used for my main guiding energy for the week, and then again to pull for additional guiding messages throughout the week. So the two main decks that I worked with throughout the week, my main tarot, my main oracle, were the Guided Hand Tarot and the Coastal Curiosities. I worked with these decks together a lot throughout that first week. I also got into it a little bit here and there throughout the month because I really love this deck and I really love this deck combo. The Guided Hand Tarot is one of my favorites. It's just, I don't know, there's something about this really sweet, loving, but also really sort of mundane, like in the best possible way, kind of collage. It's not, like, this is my jam for collage. There's not like an overabundance of stuff on the cards. Sometimes that can be really overwhelming for me. I kind of prefer that more in an oracle than I do a tarot, just because I tend to pull more tarot cards. But with this one, like, I can pull a lot of cards and I don't feel overwhelmed because there's not, even though it's collage, there's not an overabundance of stuff going on in the cards themselves. And like, I love collage decks, but I do have like a limit for where, how much collage I can tolerate, like on a card. And by tolerate, I mean before I start to feel overwhelmed by the imagery. So the oracle deck that I paired it with is the Coastal Curiosities. I think this is the 2nd edition. And oh my goodness, I absolutely adore this deck. I have had so much fun working with it this month. This creator is making a tarot deck and I am just like, I'm watching it on Instagram and stuff like that. I cannot wait for that to become available because I will 100% be getting that deck. I love the way that she collages. I love the interesting things that she does with the art. And I find that it's a really intuitive reader for me. The little guidebook is great, but I really don't need it. And that's my preference with an oracle deck. Like, I want to be able to use it without the guidebook. I know I say it all the time. It's great when the guidebook is there as a support, but I don't want to be reliant on it. In this deck, I don't have to rely on the guidebook because between the imagery and the keywords, like, I get what's going on, right? It makes sense to me. I can work with it. It's very intuitive deck for me and it just works really well. And again, it's collage that isn't super maximalist, right? This is like minimalist collage. And then I'm going to show you the little pocket deck that I played with alongside these because I did work with quite a bit of my smaller little pocket decks. I've been having a bit of a love affair with those. But anyway, these two decks together are just like amazing. The energies are really compatible, again, because they're both a little bit more on the minimalistic side for collage. I don't feel overwhelmed. And I feel like I could use these in larger readings and not kind of get lost in all the imagery, because although I do have some very maximalist collage decks in my collection, it's really not my favorite. This is more the collage style I prefer. It's a little more low key. It's a little bit more, it tends to be more in that muted color palette. I do have some wonderful, you know, like I said, maximalist collages, but this is more my cup of tea. And I love how the colors play across these decks. You know, I mentioned color a lot. Like, you've got the brown background here of the Emperor, the brown in the little animal here with Tender, as well as in the diamonds behind it. And then you kind of see that brown gold color within the little design elements here. So that's really cool. I like looking at where those little consistencies are popping up. I apologize if you can hear my dog running around, but like his legs don't work very well anymore, so he kind of clumps around a little bit. But I'm not gonna make him try to go do something. So anyway, yeah, these two together are just amazing. It's a pairing that I've used quite a few times and I always really enjoy it. It feels very comforting, very supportive. And again, it's got a really great intuitive energy that I think really flows across both of these decks really, really well. So the other deck really quickly that I was working with alongside these and just using to like punctuate my readings was the Inner Compass Oracle. And this is again, another little collage oracle. Same kind of thing. Here's the backs of these. I know I've shown these before on my channel where it's like, it's collage, but for the most part, like it's pretty, it's not super minimalist, but it's not maximalist either. Like some of them are very, you know, minimally collaged and some of them are a little bit more, but I really find this deck to be really wonderful for creating those just little accentuations in a reading or those little punctuations in a reading. And this is definitely one of my favorites for that. And I used to complain about pocket-sized decks, but I finally found my place, my way with pocket-sized decks, and that is to add that little accent to the reading. We'll just do this for a moment just so you can see how these kind of all work together. Can move all my boxes. Yeah, they're really beautiful. And I love how it kind of gives like this, like here's the reading and then there's like, but also remember kind of a thing, right? And that's kind of how I worked with it, which was a lot of fun. I think all of these decks go together really, really well. I really enjoyed my time with them. This is definitely a little deck family that I will be getting into again, because again, I think they work really well together. So in our next week, I got big decks and can't even get them on here. We had our Realm of Exploring. And so this is where we were looking at something that we wanted to learn, something that we wanted to explore more in our life, in our practice. And for me, I focused on kind of this idea of fae fairy with a bit of inner child work. So I've been dipping my toes into fae study. I want to dip my toes into a little bit more of inner child work. And I love this idea of blending the two, which really came through with these two decks for me. So I'm gonna talk about those first. So the main two decks that I worked with throughout that Realm of Exploring week was the Stolen Child Tarot. And this is one that I was a little bit unsure about, like the first few times I worked with it, but then I started kind of exploring it more through the lens of that sort of inner child like nature, that sort of fae inner child, wild inner child. And that's where I really kind of started finding my feet with this deck. And it's been really wonderful to pair it in that way with that kind of work. I've really enjoyed it. The suits are changed and sometimes I do have trouble remembering what is what. I should probably just make myself a little cheat sheet and stick it into the box. But I really enjoy the artwork in this deck and I really do like the messages that I get out of it. It really is an inner child deck for me, but really that enchanted kind of fae, wild child sort of an energy. And then a deck I paired it with was the Fairy Temple Oracle. And this is a deck that I bought specifically to pair with the Stolen Child Tarot because I just felt like the energy and the imagery were just completely aligned. And I personally feel like I was 100% right about that. This has been a really fun deck. It's not like, it's not my favorite fae deck or fairy deck of any, you know, that I have. I do enjoy my work with it. It is very positive for the most part, but I want to show you how they work together. Just kind of try to even them all out here. So I would use, again, you know, as per my usual, this is my focal point. These are my expansion upon that. And then, you know, we had prompts, so I was following along with that. But we have Mojo here with Focus, Motion, and Ascent with the King of Flame and the Seven of Zephyrs. And I think that not only artistically, because like artistically, I think these are amazing, but energetically, these really flowed really well for me. I feel like the Fairy Temple is also a Fae inner child deck. So these two, I think they kind of sit together in a pairing for me. Like, as in, I really don't know that I will work with either one of these decks with anything else. They kind of feel connected to each other now. And I don't know if that's just because like I feel like they belong together or because I've only used them really together. I did pull a couple of fairy temple oracle cards here and there, like throughout the month as well, just to kind of get a message or to do some other things with. But to be perfectly honest, like I feel like it belongs with the Stolen Child Tarot. So it's one of those pairings that might become exclusive, right? We joke, I think Lisa and I joked about like we're totally polyamorous with our decks, right? But occasionally I have deck pairings that they're completely monogamous and then I don't use them with anything else because they just kind of go together so succinctly that I just couldn't imagine using them with anything else. It's like they just belong together, they're a pair, they're a match, and you know, when I pull one out, I just need to go ahead and pull out the other. And they may just stay together as like a couple. They're my little inner child fairy fae decks. I did also integrate a couple of other oracle decks into my work with these, which I'll just show you real quickly. I used my Celtic Spirit Oracle a couple of times. This one I used really as like a grounding message. So all of this month, I think for the most part, I have had like my main reading and then I've been pulling sort of like an anchor card to ground into. So I would have kind of my focus card and then below that, a lot of the time I would pull an anchor card or something to ground into, which really kind of helps me look at how I take that energy and apply it like in a mundane sort of way, like in a practical way in my life. I really enjoyed working with these ones together. I think that the Celtic Spirit actually worked really well as a grounding card. I wasn't really sure because it's a little like into the Fae realm as well. It's a little mystical and magical, but I'm kind of in this mystical and magical world with this whole pairing anyway. But it does feel a little bit more like concrete, right? If my focus was patience with resist, realize, and commitment, then I had the Queen of Brine, the Knight of Zephyrs, and to ground into that, I had the Herbalist with herbs, medicine, and healing. So maybe the healing work and what I can do to facilitate that healing work is what I need to ground into for that particular message. So it worked really well. I really enjoyed these together. Again, I feel like these two just really kind of did something special, but I did enjoy intermingling the Celtic Spirit with it in there. So in addition to these, and I'm not going to move all this stuff out of the way, I also ended up incorporating a couple of different oracle decks in here. I have two decks that are sharing the same bag because most of the time I work with these together, as well as the Hedwitch Botanical, but I did not pull that one in because I already had enough. So this is the Winter Seer Oracle. I really love this deck. It's got some great keywords on it. The animals are fantastic. So again, being in this sort of fantasy, fairy, fae, inner child world, I felt like this worked really well in that same landscape. So this is the Telluric runes. Here's the backs. I don't know if I showed you the backs of the Winter Seer. I'm like terrible at this. I don't know why y'all watch me. Anyway, I used the Telluric runes and I was starting to incorporate some rune work into my readings, kind of slowly gearing up to something that we're going to be doing in August in my membership, which is Norse rune stuff. And so I was kind of just bringing these in to kind of refamiliarize myself with runes and just connect with that energy. But again, I feel like aesthetically and energetically, all of these decks went together really well. I should really move the big one because this is like really difficult to do. I'm just going to flip through a couple here because there's so many cards on the table. It gets hard to flip through them doing this, and I keep reaching across the camera. But look at this cow. Oh my goodness, I love the cow. Sorry, I got distracted by the cow. These are really beautiful. I love all of these decks together. They worked really well, and it was really a pleasure to step into this realm, this exploring realm, and working with these energies, which for the most part, like, is not energies that I'm super familiar with. I mean, I did do a rune study with Lisa, and so that was fantastic, but again, I'm still learning my runes. Fairy work, fae work is really new to me, still learning that, as is inner child work. And then animals. Animals are still a pretty new energy for me to work with. So putting them all together in one sort of realm of exploring readings was really fantastic, and I really enjoyed working with them all together. So in our third week, we had our realm of growing, and this is where we were looking at kind of like space and what we wanted to cultivate around us in order to facilitate our own personal growth work that we're doing, or whatever it was our focus was for our realms. And for this, I pulled out some strange decks. I really don't know what possessed me to pull out these particular decks, but this is what happened. I ended up with the Akashic Tarot, the Seasons of the Witch Beltane, the Green Witch Tarot, and this is my little Roots and Wayne pocket. So for this particular week, I really didn't focus on the idea of sort of like making matches or pairings or anything. I really pulled out decks that resonated with the kind of energy that I was looking at growing. So I picked the Akashic Tarot as one of my sort of main focus points for the week. And this deck for me really functions more as an oracle than it does a tarot. Here's the backs. You might recognize them from some of my deck mod projects, because I was doing a collage deck over the top of several copies of this deck that I got like real cheap at the Hay House sale like a long time ago. Anyway, I really do enjoy this deck. It has a really interesting, unique energy to it. Some of the artwork is, I think, really beautiful, and some of it is kind of a miss for me. It's definitely like that older digital collage, right? When we were all still kind of learning how to do this. So like there's a little bit of nostalgia, I think, for me. It's really funny because I did a video way back in the day about like decks that I really wanted to love, but just didn't. This deck, when it came in, like I was so excited for it. And then when it came in, I was super disappointed because, for one, it isn't actually a tarot. Like, it's not a 78 card tarot. It has 62 cards, and I can't remember exactly what's missing. I think some of the numbers, and for me, because the numbers are actually fairly significant to the way I work with tarot, that really didn't work for me. Some of the artwork it's kind of funny. But now, after like years of working with this deck and like getting mad at it and putting it away and like saying, forget you, I'm just going to collage over the top of you because that's like all you're good for. That sounds terrible, but this is one of my favorite cards, the Oracle of Delphi. And I also really love this Queen of Scrolls, which is the one that's on the box. And this one, like there's a lot about this deck that I actually really, really like. And once I kind of got over that initial disappointment in the fact that this does not function like a tarot deck for me because it's missing several of the cards. And for me, if you're not going to have 78 cards, I don't feel like you can call yourself a tarot. Tarot is a structure. It needs those 78 cards to complete its structure. And if you don't have that, then you're just an oracle. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's value in oracle decks too. But I do get a little bit peeved when decks that don't have 78 cards call themselves a tarot because you're missing cards. So in my world, that's not a tarot deck. And I know that's just my world and my frame of reference. There are other people that don't have any problem with decks having less than 78 cards and calling themselves a tarot. Totally fine, to each their own, right? But for me, that was a huge, huge stumbling block with this deck. Once I finally got over that, and just started using it pretty much as an oracle. I kind of ignore what's going on at the top in terms of like the numbers and what suit it relates to. And I really just focus on the messages down at the bottom and the artwork. And now it functions beautifully for me in that respect. And the guidebook is actually really wonderful. I really, really enjoy the guidebook. And so I wanted to include this and make use of it in my collection. But I just had to find my way of working with it because it didn't function for me in the way that I needed it to as a tarot deck. But that didn't mean that it didn't have value to add to my practice. So I pulled it back out again this month because for me, what this deck kind of represented, along with being like, you know, it's an Akashic tarot, so like there is that layer to it, which does, you know, resonate with stuff that I'm trying to grow in my own life and things that I do work with and energies that I work with. But it also represented for me, and I didn't realize this until like, you know, after the fact, right? When you're going back through your readings and looking at things that came out of that. This deck also represents for me that idea of being able to shift my own perspective about things and to not get too locked into a particular way of seeing things and doing things. Like I can be creative with this. It doesn't have to be a tarot for me. It can be an oracle. And that sort of represented along with just the kind of funky old school digital collage that we used to do back in the day, or that, some of us still do. There's a little bit of nostalgia there for me too with the artwork. So then the deck that I was using to like get my more robust messages, my tarot messages, was my Green Witch Tarot. And again, because it was the realm of growing, like this is just the perfect deck, because this deck really represents kind of that physical space that I would love to grow for myself. It has the energy that I would like to include in my own world, in my own space. It's a little bit witchy, it's a little bit pagan, it's very, very earthy. And that this whole deck really appeals to my Taurus self. I will not be getting that new one because this one works fine for me and I'm good with it. I love this deck. I've had it for many, many years and I'm very, very deeply bonded and connected to it. The other thing that this deck represents for me, which I've mentioned many times in many different videos, is that this is a community deck. And when I work with this deck, I feel like I'm stepping into this community, and it's like, long lost old friends, right? Where you can just pick right back up where you left off no matter how much time has passed. And this deck often comes out for me when I'm feeling like I need that. This is the Seasons of the Witch Beltane Oracle. This one I mostly pulled out, honestly, just because I hadn't used it. And so I decided to pull it out and use it, even though like it's not Beltane, but I don't think that really matters with these decks for the most part. Like, it's more about the energy. Again, we were in sort of this green witchy kind of a thing here. I had sort of the above and below thing going on, although there is some very nice sort of deeply grounded earthy imagery in this. It does feel almost like, because it's the Akashic Tarot, right? It's a little bit of the above. I had the below. You'll see that's a theme that I pulled in quite a bit throughout the month. And this also represented that kind of grounded, earthy, this is like the kind of energy I want to cultivate, right? Just do our usual pairing. I'm going to pull the Akashic off the table because it kind of exists in its own weird space for me, and it's not a deck that I really work with that often with other decks. I tend to kind of use it on its own. But these two decks actually do work really well together. I feel like the Seasons of the Witch Beltane works really well with these earthy, grounded, sort of nature-y inspired tarot decks. I do not have the Mabon one. I think that's the one that's just come out. I will probably pick it up because like have a little bit of that, complete all the achievements, right? Like do all the quest things. Like I'm the type of person that will follow every side quest to its completion just to get it done. I don't like things undone. And so I will probably, like in all honesty here, get that all of the Seasons of the Witch decks just to go ahead and complete my collection of them. I do enjoy working with them. I really do like these two together. The Yule one also goes really well with the Green Witch Tarot. That's another favorite of mine to pair with it. Energetically, they just work really well. Even artistically, they do quite well together. I'm gonna get the Mabon one. We'll see how it works with my Green Witch. The only one so far that doesn't is the Samhain, and that's totally fine because that's a totally different energy, and that one works really well with a lot of other stuff I have. So I just want to talk real quick about the little pocket oracle that I threw into my mix, again, just to sort of accentuate or punctuate those readings in different places as like that kind of, okay, there's this, and then remember this. And I use my Roots and Wings pocket for this. I love it. I do have the full-size one as well. These are just really great, succinct little messages, and they just do such a good job of really just punctuating, maybe that additional thought to keep in mind as you're, working with a deck. So it worked really well for that. I don't always, they don't sit usually at the bottom here, but they get intermingled into the deck. I'm gonna half that one because it's kind of tall. It's gonna be in my way. Love the cow card. So we have the cow with balance underneath and nature and the King of Athmes. Love that. Again, love the little punctuation with the pocket decks. That's like, I need to do a full-on video about that if anybody's interested, because like I'm so all about that right now that the Oracle decks that I'm creating all have pocket versions now. And hopefully I'll be able to talk more about that later on in life. This is kind of amazing. Look at this. So we have Orgasm with Blossom underneath, the Six of Athmes, and the Earth Mother. I mean, that's kind of perfect. Like these really do work quite well together. Really enjoy these. The Morning Dew with Union, the Eight of Athmes, and the Ace of Chalices. Beautiful. Let's just do one more because I could do this pairing all day long. Sex Magic with Potential. Yes, definite potential in that. With the Nine of Pentacles and the Six of Pentacles. Kind of wandsy energy here with the center focus of this little spread, and then that balancing it out with that pentacle energy on the side. That's really cool. So our last week was the week of connecting, and this was all about what our soul was calling for. And so for me, I chose to really focus on the sort of cosmic realm. I had done a lot of the sort of earthy grounded work in the growing, and I wanted to kind of elevate it to the cosmic level because those two things existing in balance are a huge part of my practice. So I wanted to honor that in these last 2 weeks. And the decks that I worked with are the Cosmic Visions Tarot, which was new to me and I was really excited to play with it, the Master Teacher Crystal, and the Wilderness Collide. And then I had my charms. So we'll talk about all of those here in a moment. So because we have 3 decks here, I'm not going to do my usual oracle in the center. This time I'm just going to do the tarot in the center, but that's really not how I worked with it. And you'll see that reflected in my journal. Again, I was using that sort of guiding card with the Wilderness Collide. This is an amazing collage deck. It's by the same creator as the Into the Mystic Pocket, I do believe, but I think these decks might be out of print now. The creator only has like 1 deck left on their website, which I did also buy, or on their Etsy shop. But I really, really love this deck. And again, it's another collage deck. So this was an interesting one because this is collage and the tarot that I paired it with is not. But there's just something about the way that this artwork, kind of the theme of it, it's very cosmic, but there's a little bit of groundedness to it here and there. It worked great as my focal point. It's funny, my Cosmic Thread card is still on top. I used the Cosmic Visions Tarot for my main tarot deck for the week, and oh my goodness, I love this. I think I showed it in a video this month too. It might have been a pairing video. Funny enough, I don't think I used the Oracle deck that I paired it with in the video because I ended up using the other 2 here. I adore this deck. Like, there's just something about it. That black and white with the rainbow pops of color that really draw your attention to specific elements in the card, like with the 6 of Swords. So we're not drawn to the swords, we're drawn to the flow of the river. And I think it's amazing. I think it's really intentional. I think it's really beautifully done. And I just absolutely love the energy of this deck. The artwork is like the people feel like they're probably really, really young, but because they're so like flat, and like one-dimensional, that to me they don't really represent people. They more represent like embodying the energy of this card. So like see yourself there because you're gonna embody the energy of the card, which for me that works. I love that. Anyway, this is such a cool one. And then again, because even though I'm like all up in the cosmos here, I need that grounded energy. So I had the Wilderness Collide as my focus point up in the cosmos, and then I grounded that back down with the Master Teacher Crystal Oracle. Yes, that's the name of this deck. I really do love this deck. I love the theme of the each of the cards, the titles, like what each card represents. We've got the beautiful crystal, and then we've got the sort of key word for it. So we have inner child with innocence here, balancer with grounding. The only thing this deck doesn't do on the card is tell you what crystal it is, which really for me is totally fine because I don't use it as a crystal deck, so to speak. I use it as the crystal is sort of pulling in and amplifying the energy that's represented through, I love this personal power card, it's just black. That's being pulled through and then amplified into this message here. And so that's kind of how I work with it, although the crystals are listed in the guidebook. So the guidebook's really nice for this book, or for this deck. But I don't really like pay attention to what crystal it is. I'm more using the crystals as an energetic channel to the energy that's reflected through the actual keywords and key phrases. These 3 together were actually really good. I will show you the charms and how I worked with those here in a moment. I'm not like a huge charm person, but I'm definitely getting into it, and I have a very specific couple sets of charms. These together were really fantastic. I really enjoyed the way that we had kind of that balancing energy between the sort of, again, above and below with the 2 oracle decks, and then I used the tarot, which for me really represented just the energy of the message, right? This is like, here's the energy from above, here's the energy from below, and the tarot just kind of tells me like, okay, what do you need to do with it? How do you need to interact with it? Because again, like the way that I see these people, like they aren't really people to me. They're more like they embody the card energy. So like for me, this lady isn't in the 9 of Cups. She embodies the 9 of Cups, and then reminds me of how I can embody the 9 of Cups. And so that's how I've been working with the crystal visions. I'm really kind of in love with it, really kind of smitten. This is what I call my geek charms, my nerd charms. Everything in here is nerdy based. And it's even like it's in a critical role dice bag. So I kind of just shake it up. I grab just a few, and then I just kind of give them a shake and then drop them, and whatever ends up, this is how I work with it. So like this one, I wouldn't even include because it's not on any of the cards. So what I do is just take any of them that are on the cards, and I work with the energies of those. So funny that in the truth, the higher truth card, what I'm grounding down into, we have a Cyberman from Doctor Who. There's a little bit of awareness, a little bit of shadow energy there with that. We have the planets talking about that higher connection, the integrated all. There's a Stargate up here, so that would tell me that like there's some portal energy going on, and it's almost like off this card and nudged to the 2nd star card, so that would be the portal into this. And then I have this little D&D dice here, and it is just barely touching the Mother of Pentacles. So that would tell me, you know, that's a minor, really, really minor influence on this card. So that's kind of how I was playing with my charms throughout the week. Let's go through the charms. I'll show you what's in here just really quickly. Move all this, and I will show you what is in my charm set. Is that everybody? No. Okay. So there's also Vox Machina charm on the bag, which I should probably take off and put in here, but I haven't. Okay, so I've got like dice. There's a whole dice set, and where I got all of these are all charm bracelets that I just order off Amazon. They're like 15 bucks a piece, I think, and then I just take the ones off that I want. So I have a whole set of dice here that came off a D&D set. This is an Eye of Ra from Stargate, an actual Stargate. This is really hard to do. We have the Earth symbol from Stargate. Then we have some Star Trek, so the emblem. There's Doctor Who. Here's a Dalek. Charms are so hard to show. Oh my goodness. K9, the robot from Doctor Who. These are all Doctor Who ones. The little blobby things, I totally spaced what their names are. The TARDIS. There's the Cybermen. This is a timepiece. So those are all Doctor Who. Here's a book, and that's a D&D one. We have the Stargate emblem, one of my favorites. Roll for Initiative, that is a D&D one. We have the Spock's hand with the Live Long and Prosper. I don't have a ton of Star Trek in here because I didn't care for most of them that were on the thing, but I'll look for more. A Bat'leth. There's the planet. Ooh, a Weeping Angel from Doctor Who. Love it. Then we have the Enterprise, of course, from Star Trek. The DHD, or the Dial Home device, from Stargate. A sword. Little sword, D&D, a dragon for D&D, and then finally a little one that says Indeed for Tilk. Yeah, that's my charm set. So we have Stargate, we have Star Trek, we have Doctor Who, and then we have D&D. And I will continue to add to this. So it's just, this is me just adding like all my nerdy fun stuff into all the other stuff that I do. And again, I've got it in a Critical Role dice bag that originally had my Keyleth dice in it, but they're in my dice tray now. So I want to talk about a couple of other decks that I was like playing with, getting to know throughout the month. This is the Sacred Geometry Activations Oracle and the Super Lunaris Tarot. So this one, the Sacred Activations and the Superlunaris, I was playing with together for just some various sort of energetic kind of readings that I was doing. I think I've mentioned both of these decks before. The Sacred Geometry Activation Oracle is a fairly new deck in my collection. I think I've just used it for a couple of months now. I really enjoy the messages, actually. The, cards aesthetically are like, they're fine. Like the artwork in the center here is beautiful, but like the rest of what's going on, not so much. But the messages are really good. The guidebook's quite good too. I really have been enjoying working with it. It works really well as an energetic focal point, and I've been really enjoying using it for that. And then the Superlunaris Tarot is actually one that's kind of surprised me because and I don't really know why, but I felt like it was going to sit in the same space as the Textured Tarot, but it really doesn't. It's very people-y focused, so I was actually using this one quite a bit for like looking at energies, working with people and dealing with other people, which has been really interesting. Just kind of, I don't usually do a ton of readings like about other people and things like that, or in alignment with relationships. That's really not a big part of my practice, but I was playing with this a little bit just because this deck is so people-y, and it did work really well. I don't know if like aesthetically they're like the very best match in the world, because I'm really not a fan of this like parchmenty weird background thing going on in the Sacred Activation one. I feel like it would have been like so much more powerful if they had just used that as the full image and then just done the message down at the bottom. But I do really like the messages, so I don't really want to like cut it off, I don't think. Look at this Devil card. That is like an amazing Devil card. So here we have like Gaia. It says the frequency of Gaia reminds us that we are infinitely connected to one another, just as we are to our great mother and to the universe that birthed us all. And between that, we have this absolutely gorgeous Nine of Pentacles and the King of Pentacles. I mean, how beautiful is that? That earthy pentacly realm working with the frequency of Gaia and our connection to each other and to the earth itself. It also is a great one for me for just looking at sort of energies on the whole, like in a communal sense. And then something about the Superlunaris Tarot that I found really interesting was that for me, it's not really an individual deck. It's not a deck that really reflects me or that I feel like really deeply personally connected to, right? Like the Llewellyn or the Green Witch, where I feel like those could stand in as a representation for me. The Superlunaris feels like a representation of humanity, and so it's not a personal deck. This is a deck that I think for me functions more in the macrocosm kind of an idea of like not really individuals, but more like humans on the whole, people on the whole. I mean, it did work for looking at, individual energies with individual people. That worked pretty well too, but I feel like overall, it really is more about the frequency of humanity, the connection of humanity. And so it was really interesting to explore it through that lens, and I really, really enjoyed my work with it. Watch out, Chet's in my way. Real quick, I'm just gonna do a little flip through of my tarot journal. Again, this is my monthly medicine one. If you want to see my sacred readings journal, that is in a whole other video. I'll leave it linked for you below. I like to print the covers of our monthly medicine off on vellum and tip them into my journal. So here's kind of like my title page with what we did each week and the decks that I used. And then here was our first week of the Realm of Nurturing. These are all with my, printed off with my little Canon Ivy. Which I have here in this little case. I'm not going to drag it back out because y'all have probably seen them, if not seen my own. But I do my readings and I just print out the little pictures. This time I did mostly mostly writing. This whole book is turning into mostly writing, which is fantastic. It's what I wanted for it. I do a little stamping here and there. But you can see it's just a lot of me writing and reflecting and, having my whole, doing the whole tarot thing, right? So every week with the monthly medicine, there's usually 3 prompts per week, which a lot of us do on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then there's also like a Facebook group and all of that where people post and share their readings and stuff like that. But we have kind of like coming into the week, what we're going to be working on, the energies that we're going to work on, the medicine reading, which is really how we get into that into that work, and then the reflection at the end of the week or at the end of the work for that week, and then kind of, you know, what we've learned, what we need to know moving forward. So that's kind of the process that it follows pretty much week after week, month after month. Every month is a new theme. It gives me an opportunity to work with this huge range of decks because I do tend to swap out my decks weekly in alignment with the themes. And so it gives me a chance to really work my way through like my collection and work with all these different energies, which is fantastic. I really enjoy it. So this is the Realm of Connecting, which was that last week with the Cosmic Visions and my charms. Oh, and then this is what's coming up for July, the Ebb and Flow, because I've already tipped in my cover for that. So that's our focus for July. So yeah, that was everything that I kind of got up to in June. Like I said, all of my sacred readings are in another video, so you can check that out. But this was pretty much all the decks that I worked with for the monthly medicine practice, as well as a few other random things and decks that I worked with throughout the month. So it was kind of like a really like maximalist month for me, I think, in terms of decks. And it's going to be interesting because our theme for next month, as you probably saw in my journal, is Ebb and Flow. And so I'm going to kind of pull it back a little bit, and I'm gonna probably work with less decks in July. I'm not gonna say for 100% because, like, you never know. But that's kind of the thought, maybe. But I did really enjoy this whole kind of like maximalizing all of my readings throughout the month. That was really, really fun. So as usual, I'll have links for everything I've shown here in the description box of this video for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you had a wonderful June, and I wish you many blessings moving into July.